YouTube and Facebook, and I don't know what else.
In all the places. So
In all-
welcome everyone to Monday Musings. I am Dr. Syra, and I am a transpersonal therapist and clinical director at Dragonfly Wellness.
And my name is Faizan Sabzeli, founder something at Dragonfly Academy. It's been a lot on the go.
A lot
A
on
lot
the
on the
go.
go.
Yeah.
So it's just been kind of playing catch up here. Okay, so I think we're live everywhere. Obviously, if you're on Zoom, please send us your questions and comments. We'll try to pay attention to the chat on
The other
the
platforms.
other platforms, but our focus is going to be on Zoom, obviously. So yeah, and we'll wait for a few more people to join, but otherwise, I think we can get started.
Yep. So today's in the newsletter. So if you're not getting our weekly newsletter, you can. How do people sign up for that, Phase? Is there a way?
Well, if they signed up for
here.
Monday Musings, then yes, they are. Otherwise,
But people who are watching this later,
there's a form that they can fill out
On our
our
website?
website. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So if you want to be part of the newsletter and you're not already, then there's a way that you can do that. And this week's newsletter, we talked about, we kind of alluded to kind of some of the busyness that's been going on, and this idea of doubt, right? And how insidious doubt can be, and how it just kind of creeps in when you're not really expecting it. Some of us kind of live in a perpetual state of self-doubt. And then others of us feel like we're pretty confident people, but once in a while when it really matters, the doubt seems to creep in. And so that's kind of what we're talking about today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's been an interesting journey, right? Like because we're being asked to step up our game within the business. I mean, within the way we do healing at the center, that's one. But the way we run our business, the way we're being asked to show up as leaders and make the tough decisions, and being able to make those tough decisions, and kind of sometimes struggling with it. It's like, but what if, right? Like the what ifs kind of show up, and and I think we've joked about this before, that any topic that comes up, we get to live it for the month.
Self-doubt, here we go.
So self-doubt is
March.
Yeah. And I don't know if we live it. I think we live all the topics, but it becomes very apparent.
Yeah, like magnified almost.
Yeah. It's magnified in a sense that, I have a lot of doubts here, and I don't know how to handle it.
And it comes out in so many different places. Like this morning, I've started doing this. Doing this 90-day little high intensity interval training program. HIIT. It's actually fun. It's a lot of fun, and it's just like 20 minutes a day of certain exercises that you can do from home. Because we tried this gym and that gym, and it's just nothing's hitting. So today when I was
it's not the gym thing. It was just like setting up a discipline.
Like the rhythm and that
to the
routine.
schedule. Yeah.
So this morning I was like doing the thing, and there was like at the end. Now it's the same. The way that it is like three exercises and then a break, and then 3 exercises and a break, right? So you're only doing those exercises for like literally like 30 seconds or a minute, like not a lot of time. But by the time we got to the final exercise of the final 25 minutes, that last minute, I was like slacking. Like if that personal trainer had been looking at me live, he would know. He like, come on. And then he said it on the video. He's like, come on. I know you can do better than that on the video. He can't see me, but he's pre-recorded this. But I like heard him, right? Because up until that moment, I was like, oh, I can't do this. I don't know how to do this. I'm clumsy. This isn't working. And like all this self-doubt, which was like making the workout be not fun for me, because I was telling myself all kinds of stories about my capability and my capacity. And it was like, have you ever heard of mountain climbers? It's a certain exercise. I hate them. I can officially say it's really annoying. So you have to put your hands on the ground like this, and then you move your legs like back and forth as if you're like running up a mountain like this.
I want to see you. We live near mountains. I want to see you.
I do when I read.
I know, but
when I pull.
I want you to go like this.
This is my version of a mountain climber, and it was like so hard, and I could, but I realized as soon as I questioned the doubt, I could do it,
Hmm.
right? Because then, like, honestly, Syra, you have 30 seconds left.
Yeah.
Like, you can do this for 30 seconds,
Yeah.
right? So it's interesting how the thought can come, and then you can sometimes actually think your way out of that thought, even in the middle of the moment.
But there's so many things like that, right? Like where it's I'm not understanding why it's happening, but like you said, questioning
Mm-hmm.
thought, questioning where, why it's coming up, where is it coming from, like just asking it.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, whoa, wait, you're not supposed to ask me anything. I'm just supposed to stop you from doing things.
Right.
And I mean, there was a biological reason. There was a um,
Like an adaptive.
yeah, well, adaptive reason, but there's also a psychological reason for us in this moment, right? Like, hey, if you're gonna act too crazy, your, your dad might yell at you, like not crazy in the sense like crazy, crazy, but like,
Too exuberant.
right?
Mountain climbers.
It's like, hey, behave yourself, right? But it's stuff like that that comes up, and then that voice is like, oh, maybe I'm not supposed to be on, leading a call. I'm not supposed to be leading a business. I'm not, whatever, right? Like whatever those voices are, that I can't do this workout, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
It's like those voices come from that place of trying to survive, right? And being able to tell that voice, it's
We're
okay.
okay. We're okay.
It's 30 more seconds. We're
Like,
not
you
gonna
don't, and you don't have to be like a elite athlete. You're just doing it at the best level as you can, right? So my thing is that push, 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 be better, be better. And if I'm not the best, why do it at all? Like that kind of thinking, which I think a lot of brown people have that. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe a lot of people like from all
I think it's
backgrounds.
just a lot of
But I
people
think
have it, yeah.
like kids of immigrant parents, I think have that a lot, where it's like you got to push and you got to try and you got to really work hard, and it's served me absolutely well for so many years. But come on now, this means I'm not going to exercise because I can't do that. These are my legs doing this, okay, not my arms.
No. I want your arms to do it when you go up a mountain. Yeah, no, I think it's we're kind of living in this interesting space, right? These voices and where these voices come up. So if you got a chance to watch this week's Therapist Thursday video, if not, it's somewhere where right there,
Dragonfly Wellness
TV. Go ahead, hit subscribe.
Yeah, subscribe. We want to increase our subscriber numbers. So if you are watching our videos and you're enjoying them,
Yeah. I don't know what we get.
You can do a like when you like the video, and you can press subscribe. I don't know what happens, but something good is supposed. I don't know. Our 14-year-old was trying to explain it to us. We didn't get it, but do it.
So, anyways, part of the video you were talking about using the relationship triangle to understand where doubt comes from.
Yeah.
Right, like where it's rooted.
Yeah.
So I think that was I thought it was an interesting point of view to kind of, again, revisit. We've talked about how we have to use everything that we've talked about.
Does he call it, I was wondering, does he call it the relationship triangle, or does he call it the triangle model?
I think he calls it the triangle model.
Yeah. I think we need to change that everywhere. I think we got that wrong.
Okay.
So it's called the triangle model, not the relationship triangle. We learned it in the context of a relationship course that we were taking with him, and so all the examples were about relationship, but it can be used for other things as well, even our own personal development and process. Yes. So we're going to show you again, as a reminder, refresher for those who might not have seen this before, a new thing. Here's the triangle model from Chuck Spezzano. And you'll see here.
And again, as a caveat, we've simplified this triangle because the triangle does not fit anywhere.
Yeah, it's like so complicated.
If we try to show it,
so we pulled out some kind of basic ideas and the key areas that each of these stages, and then there's more stages inside the triangle, and we haven't even put those on the map because that's like a whole nother course. Yeah. But we just thought for people who are with us live, give us a thumbs up in the reactions if you've seen this before. This is familiar, and if you know this, give us a thumbs up in the reaction, or put yes in the chat. There's a couple, one person, okay.
A few people, like four people.
Great. 4 people have seen it.
Yeah.
And yeah, another person. Okay, so you've seen this, so it's somewhat familiar. And there may be people who have never seen this before ever. So we'll do a quick walkthrough, right?
Yeah.
If you're interested in doing a deeper dive on the triangle model, we have a YouTube video, a Therapist Thursday video that I did a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
Specifically like going into each section, and then we also talk about it in our Love Talks orientation, which is on our website. So there's lots of places you can find it if you want to do a deeper dive. Okay, so let's start with the dependent side of the triangle, and we'll link this to self-doubt as we go. We start our development in a place of needs, right? So we feel like that somebody else has something that we need, and we're kind of at the mercy of other people's giving us what we need. So it makes sense that self-doubt would start really young, because when we're really young, we have a lot of needs and we can't do things for ourselves.
So I think a lot of us come to these types of educational webinars, streams. We watch videos on, okay, it starts there.
Yeah, but now what?
No, not just that. How do I avoid it? Right? So if I wanted to avoid this with my kids, I know it's too late for me.
Yes.
But
Great question.
And it's like someone sometimes just feels like, no, I don't think it can be avoided.
Okay, here's the answer. Are you ready?
Go ahead.
This is what Dr. Gabor Mate talks about, is bringing it to consciousness. So our children will have needs. Our children will go through heartbreak. They will go through that phase of judgment and control. That's part of development. That's part of how our brain develops and our relationships develop. What's important is that they have a place to talk about that, and that we're validating that as a natural part of growing up, right? So feeling really needy and like you're so small, that's a natural part of growing up. I remember when my daughter was about 4, she kind of regressed and wanted to like be a baby and like wanted to like be held and cuddled a lot, and so I kind of like caught on to that, and I was like, and I sat her down, we were cuddled up, and I said, it must be hard to be so little, huh? Sometimes you must feel like you're just such a little baby. So she was saying some of this to me, but I just like reflected it back to her, like, it must be hard to be so small. And she burst into tears, and she told me about something that was happening at preschool where she was trying to be a big girl, but it wasn't working. And right, so it's like this is happening in the background, right? But children don't have language to be able to say what's happening for them. And so the adults can help with that. Now, is that going to mean she never gets hurt and she never gets traumatic experience or painful experiences that she carries into adulthood? Probably not, because I think that's part of the soul's evolution, right? Is to push against hard moments and grow from them.
And I think one of the challenges, right, as parents who try to be conscious, I believe, for us, we still fail because we're not conscious all the time.
And our own inner child stuff comes up, and our own self-doubt comes up. So what happens when the child has a need, but I also have a need, right?
Yeah, like our own traumas come up and they kind of take over. They take the programming over. It's like,
and so we're
going to interrupt this.
We're interrupting this. And when you realize that, so those who are parents, when you realize that, then you can loop back around to your kids and say, hey, sorry, by the way, when we had that conversation. And this isn't just with little kids. You can do this with your adult children, right? It's never too late to reestablish and reconnect and repair. Never too late. So you can do this with your adult children. You know, last week when we were having that conversation, I used kind of a mean tone, and I'm sorry about that. I'm going through some stuff or whatever. I have no excuses, but sorry, I noticed I did that. And it just clears the air so fast, right?
Yeah.
So needs. We move from needs to heartbreak because our needs are not always met. And they can't always be met, right? So even the thing about, can we avoid doing this with our kids? Maybe not, because your dog is going to die, or your friend is going to move away, or, you know, you won't get the blue crayon or whatever. Things are going to happen.
Yeah. And I think it's part of why I like the triangle, is that this is part of the journey.
Right.
Because
it's not pathologizing it, right?
And what we at least learned, if I remember it correctly, right? Like that. I just want to leave the screen up for a second.
Sure.
That when we're in the heartbreak, right? It kind of actually leads us into the power struggle. And then when we're in the needs, we try to control them. When we're in judgment, we kind of like there is this relationship
Mm-hmm.
of getting to the dead zone. But I think a lot of us try to avoid these things, right? Like oh, I want to avoid getting my heart broken. I
Right.
want to avoid being in a power struggle. I want to avoid being in a dead zone.
Mm-hmm.
But there's no way I can get into this leadership without actually experiencing that dead zone.
Mm-hmm.
And I think part of life's journey is right, like yes, we don't need to add to the already difficult situations that life is going to present by introducing trauma,
Mm-hmm.
right, as parents, but that we're not going to be able to prevent these kids from going through a heartbreak,
Right.
right? At some point in their life, they're going to lose somebody. They might lose us.
Right. And if they're not affected by that, then they're a sociopath.
Right?
Right?
So, yeah.
Like they should be affected by loss and grieving,
Right.
and that's a normal, natural human thing.
So I think it's to be able to kind of help them through, right? Like, okay, they're in the heartbreak, kind of showing up for them.
And
So,
heartbreak is often seen as like a romantic word. Like, when you think
yeah,
about the word heartbreak, it's usually about, losing a relationship romantically. But
mm,
heartbreak can be so many different things. And usually heartbreak starts in the home, right? Heartbreak starts, there was this show I was watching yesterday, and this guy's father's passing away and he can't be there beside him as he's passing away. And they show this scene, and I was so moved. They show this scene of them playing baseball, like catch when he's little, and the dad has to go to work, right? And he's like, "Oh, son, I gotta go." And then the son's like watching him go, and he's like, eyes are filling up with tears. He's like 6 or 7, right? And he's like, "Don't go, dad, don't go." And then it like flashes to him. I can feel the emotions coming up just thinking about it. Like, then he's like, dad, don't go, right? So the heartbreak of his dad leaving because he had to be at work,
mm,
that's a heartbreak for
mm,
kids. Like, it hurts,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah. And I think it's yeah. We all go through it daily sometimes, right? Like, oh, this person didn't say hi to me. It
And
feels
it
like right,
feels
like
like
it feels like
painful,
heartbreak, and
yeah.
it's painful in a sense. Like, wait,
But
what did I do?
hopefully when we're adults, we're more discerning. Like, we question that more, and we think about a different way. So as a child, you think, "Oh, this person didn't say hi to me." As an adult, you might say, um, "Maybe they didn't notice me, or
Yeah,
maybe they're going through something, or maybe this isn't about me at all." Right? But the child brain wants to make everything about us.
right.
The child inside.
So how does this? How do I think especially the judgment piece, right, is what really takes us into where we
Self
talk
doubt.
about self doubt, right? So how does this area
Mm-hmm.
being dependent,
Mm-hmm.
how does it lead to self doubt?
Well, when we're independent, we rely on other people to make us okay, right? So they out there have to behave a certain way so that I can be okay. And if they're not behaving, like if I'm not okay, then probably I've done something wrong. That's how the child's brain works, is that if I'm not okay, it's probably my fault.
Right.
Even if they're in a toxic environment, even if it has nothing to do with them, right?
Yeah.
Oh, oh my goodness. Somebody saying, imagine a father left his child in the middle of the night while they were asleep. And then on the phone, the child's saying to the father, Papa, please don't leave us. Please come back. This happens, right, in
Mm-hmm.
families
Mm-hmm.
where parents leave, or like I lived, I mean,
Yeah.
not that exact situation, but my dad left when I was very young. And I remember those phone calls and the pain of like, just and I
Mm-hmm.
can't imagine what he was going through on the other end of the line now as an adult, thinking like, oh, as a parent, to hear your child saying
Yeah.
oh, so
Yeah.
heartbreaking. But so that's where the self-doubt piece links into this, is that because other people get to decide if I'm happy, if I'm not happy, it's probably something I did. That's kind of how the young mind
Mm.
works, because it would be dangerous, psychologically dangerous, for us to say that my parent did something wrong.
Right.
Up to a certain age, up till about the age of about 8, but for sure 10, we don't. It's not really possible for us unless we're living in like a very different sort of like we have a lot of like loving adults around that are really letting us know our worth, and then we can like be more. But for most kids, they need their parents to be the heroes, and so they will say, I did something wrong. So that's where self-doubt starts.
Yeah. And how do parents kind of unconsciously, not intentionally,
Hmm.
but how do they plant those seeds of doubt? Like, what are some of the things that are happening other than obviously we've talked about somebody leaving, but
Well, they don't.
what are some of the other
I
things?
think it's challenging, right? Because so I was actually talking to a friend of mine who's a child therapist, and I was asking her. I was telling her about some kids I know who are always getting hurt. Like they're always breaking bones and this and that. I'm like, what is that about? Like, is there a psychological? And of course, she doesn't know these kids, and we were just kind of like spitballing together as professionals. But one of the things she shared with me was risk management, right? We need to be able to encourage our kids to manage risk. So to take risks and then to manage how much risk they're going to take. So for an example, um, my little triplets, my niece and nephew triplets. I don't know how to say it. The three of them, they are getting older, and one of the things that they're doing right now is that they're jumping off the couch onto the ground. And so my sister has like, FaceTimed me in when they're doing this, and sometimes there'll be like all these pillows on the ground so they can jump and then they don't get hurt, right? And sometimes they miss the pillows. It's like flop, slap right into the ground. And so they're learning. So their parents have set it up like some safety, right? So that it can be a little bit more safe. And they've done doing it on carpet, not on the hardwood. And so the parents have made those choices to say, okay, let's keep it as safe as we can. But every time that child jumps, they're making a decision about, can I do this? Can I do this? Can I do this? And the more they practice, the more confident they become in their body awareness. Now, think about in a family where you're not allowed to make a lot of noise. There's not a lot of room to move around. Things are actually dangerous, like it's a concrete floor and there's no way to make that safer. The parent has a headache. Like it could be anything, right? And that child goes to take the jump and the people around them get scared, right? And so what they've done is that now they've just told that child not to take that risk because it's not safe. The child will listen to the adult. As that child grows and is like encouraged not to take risks, they actually don't know their body's capacity. This is what Carrie was telling me, right? That they stop gauging with their own body and they start gauging with the outside environment, looking around to see, do other people think this is safe, not is this safe for my body. So when they get to a certain age, like 12, 13, 14, they haven't slowly jumped off the couch and then slowly jumped off to something higher and then slowly jumped off to something higher and then ride their bike down this steep of a hill and then this steep of. They haven't done all of that exploration, so they don't know where their limits are. So then they become teenagers and they're going to engage in risky behavior because that's part of what the teenage brain tells them to do, but they haven't built up that over time, that capacity to manage risk. Yeah. Isn't that fascinating? I just found that so fascinating.
And then as adults, that can translate into things like where we've seen clients, right? Like, it's like, I can't make a decision. I don't know how to, like, I know I need to go get a different job.
Yeah.
But I can't, right? Like, it's like they're just stuck because they don't know what the risks are.
Right.
And not that there's always risks. And we've made changes in our lives where it's failed great. I failed well. I guess I could say that. Yeah.
Getting good at failing.
But it was like, oh, I didn't even realize that could happen because it's just right. Like now I've learned. Like wait, there's some planning that needs to happen. I can still take a risk.
But you jumped, without any safeties and without actually knowing what the risk was because you weren't actually taking risks. And so that self-doubt, again, how it links back is when I haven't had the space to take calculated risks, then I don't take any risks. And then I'm worried about my capacity. And so I'm constantly doubting myself.
Yeah.
Right? The other thing that can happen, and this is more in adulthood, is that somebody does take a risk, a calculated risk, and they're really badly burned and they don't recover from that. Because what they tell themselves is, well, I took this, and I see this often in relationship, right? In romantic relationship, where somebody will take a risk, they'll give it all, they'll give their whole heart to someone, and there'll be a heartbreak, And then they kind of shut down and they close down. And they're like, I am never doing that again. I am never going to let anybody hurt me like that ever again. Right? That's kind of, and we hear these things. You probably heard these things or thought these things yourself. And so then there's a choice that's a choice point where you can say, you shut down and like, that's it. I'm going to create this callus and never ever let anybody close to me again. Or to say that was one experience and it really, really hurt. And it's building my heart muscle, building my relational heart muscle to know what, maybe next time I notice things in a different way, or I watch for these warning signs, or, maybe I select, like I have so many clients, right, that select the same partner over and over and over in a different body, right? And it's like they keep attracting or keep saying yes to that same type of person who treats them a certain way. And then they're like, how do I always get myself in this situation? Well, you've told yourself a story about how much of a risk you're willing to take. And I'm only going to risk to this point, and I'm not going to try something different than this because I know this. And it's all unconscious. Nobody would do this on purpose. Like nobody would try to do this. It's all kind of our tracks and our rhythms that have been set from a long time ago.
And part of the doubt also is from this place of familiarity, right? That voice, whether it's my own voice or it's my parents' voice or some other adults or the society's voice, but that voice has been playing and it feels familiar. I don't like it, but I know it's familiar, right? So I keep on going back to those paths. So you talking about picking somebody who's not the fit for me, but I keep on picking that person,
or somebody like that,
person.
Yeah,
it means that, right? Like it's just familiar. I know how to deal with it.
Right. I might not like it.
Yeah, I don't like the heartbreak, but I know what it'll feel like.
And you want to take it even deeper? So in the context of a long-term relationship, we can do the same thing.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you and I are interacting in a certain way and I'm just kind of used to that and I don't like it, but I'm just used to it, I'm not going to challenge it. I'm not going to push back. I'm just going to roll my eyes and complain to my sister. Right? Nothing changes in that case. Right? But if I can take a risk and put myself on a bit of a like discomfort to maybe have a conversation about it. Maybe I respond differently when you're responding a certain way, right? Trying different things. There may be a different outcome. There may not be.
Yeah.
But that's the risk. So even within the relationship, you can find your partner starts to feel like they're changing, often because you're starting to make some changes. And that's the other, when I work with clients, again, it's like one person in the relationship changes and the whole relationship has to change.
Yeah.
It's impossible for it not to change. And one of the changes might be that you lose the relationship. And that's why people often don't make a change, because they think, I don't want to lose it all, so I don't even want to say anything.
Yeah.
And then you're kind of stuck in this really toxic interaction because you've kind of settled for it.
Right. Yeah. No, I agree. And I think that's that's one thing about doubt, is that this voice is not going to go away because it's been laid down so well, right? Like the path has been laid down and it's familiar. And I think what we have to do is notice that we're going down that path and call ourselves out and say, wait, I'm supposed to be going down this path, right? I'm supposed to make a left turn today. Like, but the right feels like that. Yeah, I know, but it's like, but we're not going that way. We're not going there today.
Trying a different destination.
Right? Yeah, we're going to, right? I'm not going to No Frills today. I'm going to, I don't know. I was going to say Askews. I don't know how many Askews.
Namaste Indian restaurant.
Namaste Indian restaurant, sure. Right, but it's like I'm planning on going somewhere else. But I find myself, and I like, if you think about driving, right?
That happens all the time,
you just
right?
Like, wait,
how did I get here?
Right, like we when we're getting on the highway, because 99% of the time we go towards Salmon Arm,
right? And
so we get on that highway, right? But that 1% where we have to go towards
Kamloops, then you have to take the other
Vancouver,
exit. Yeah, went the wrong way.
Yeah. But it's like, because it's just, we're not thinking about it, right? We're just
automatic.
Yeah, it's just an automatic response. So if we can see self-doubt not as something that should hold us back, but as an automatic response,
that we can recorrect, we can recalibrate.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Once we notice it, like, oh, oops, this is familiar.
So how does that, on the triangle, the judgment, right? Why is it specifically judgment? I think you were talking about in your video where Uh, did I maybe miss?
I don't remember.
Because I was doing 2 or 3 videos today, so maybe maybe I'm mixing
What
up.
do you think? I don't know.
No, but like like the dependent side of the triangle where we have a judgment
Hmm.
piece. Why does that or how does that lead us to kind of into self doubt? Because at least from my understanding, you didn't talk about this, but from a judgment perspective, it's that right. Like I'm holding you responsible for something, but I don't want to take
Right.
responsibility for it.
Yes.
Right. So it's like you should be on time, whether I'm on time or not, it doesn't matter.
Or oh, no. Here's another one. You should be on time rather than I should be more flexible.
Yeah.
Right?
Like, yeah. Okay, that's even better.
Right?
That's even better. So I think it's it's this piece about right like that the responsibility is on them,
Right.
and I feel like when the responsibility is on them, that also adds a self doubt because they need to do something
For me to feel better.
for me to feel better, and it
Right.
kind of lines up to that dependence side. Right? I'm dependent on their validation.
Yeah.
Right, that they validate me by showing up on time.
Right. Right.
Right, and so if for some reason car breaks down, they didn't show up on time, it means something about me.
Right. Right.
Right, or like that money that was supposed to come into the bank to pay for something, when it doesn't show up, you're like, oh, now what are we going to do? Right, so it's stuff like that that kind of these things happen, but we're always dependent on them to make me feel
How does
good.
the money bank one? I don't get that.
No, but it's
connection.
like okay, like a few years ago when we were deep in debt, the place I was working at had a outage, so they didn't run the payroll.
Okay.
And I'm like, money was supposed to be in the bank by Friday, so
Yeah.
we could pay that credit card.
Right.
Then we could pay for gas on that credit
So
card.
what did you
like,
make it mean?
Like,
Like the universe is against you?
yeah, like the world is against me. Like, oh, I'm never gonna get out of this.
Right.
Right, like never. Like when, especially when I can catch myself when I'm speaking in absolutes.
Never always.
I'm never gonna do this. You always do this. Like I'm like, oh, there's doubt
Right.
creeping in because it's always about something else then. So, but like, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
I just want to read one of the
sure.
comments. So someone said, I was finally able to talk to my husband today about my freeze response when he is angry and upset with the children. I saw him receive it and it landed.
Tell us a little bit more. Like, what does that mean?
So I think it sounds like that's to what we were talking
No,
about
no, I
before,
think that
right? How a
conversation- yeah,
relationship can change by having some awkward, uncomfortable.
Yeah, no, and I like the fact that they're talking about right, like
that I
you-
feel free.
yeah.
I get frozen when I
Right.
hear the yelling.
and you're also seeing that he's capable of handling this conversation, right? Because that's the other, like, oh, he's not going to be able to handle this conversation, so you just don't. Even
And
deal
some
with it.
people cannot. Some
Yeah.
people, it's not safe to have that conversation. So you have to be discerning
Yeah,
because some people are. It's going to make it worse. So you have to kind of know,
right. Especially
who
when
you're
it's
speaking.
around physical and emotional abuse.
Yeah.
Like you gotta be that part separate, but like on a kind of a regular day-to-day conversations, ups and
kind of.
downs. Yeah, it's like it's being able to say, hey, listen, when sometimes I can't handle it, that means I need to go develop that skill
Mm-hmm.
to go handle it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I think what I wanted to see, if the person is willing to share, is what changed in him that showed you
That it landed.
that it landed.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's a great question.
Yeah.
If you want to share.
If you want to share, yeah. So so while that person, if that person's going to respond, do you want to talk about that judgment piece and kind of that taking responsibility and how that actually helps us kind of loosen the grip on self-doubt?
So judgment is a really interesting thing. And I was doing this exercise with this woman last week on judgment, one of my clients, and we were talking about the things that she judges in other people. And the philosophy is, and you might have heard me talk about this before, the psychosynthesis model, where the idea is that we come in whole with all of the elements of what it means to be human. And then as we grow, we cut off different pieces to like accommodate our families and our school systems and all of that, our jobs. And then we are walking around like this half person. And part of the task of adulthood is to start collecting all those pieces back. So if you're judging someone, it's quite likely that there's that element is in you as well, just hidden or buried. So I'm going to say that again. If you're judging someone, it's quite likely that that element is also in you, but hidden or buried. And so we went through this process where we started identifying what are the things that she judges in other people. And then we did a really interesting exercise where we took each of those qualities and said, what's the hidden benefit or the silver lining in a person acting this way? So one of the things that came up was self-absorbed, right? She had a lot of judgment for people who are self-absorbed. Well, what's the
Really?
upside? Do you have judgment for people who are self-absorbed? Do I have judgment for people? You have to explain that really now. I'm very curious.
I just knew this self-absorbed person a long time ago. There's this.
So here's the upside of being self-absorbed. I can tell you.
There's this person at my wedding.
You prioritize yourself. You ask for what you need.
Yeah.
You don't put up with bullshit. Right? So that's the upside of being self-absorbed.
Yeah,
It can
yeah.
seem self-absorbed to somebody else, but the person themselves might say, no, I'm just asking for what I need.
Right.
And I'm aware of my own responses to things, and that trumps other people at this moment in time.
And people who struggle to actually state what they need and ask for what they need,
They will judge those people that know how to ask.
that know how to have boundaries.
Right.
Now, not everything's about a boundary. Obviously, you can be self-absorbed without actually just asking for what you need. Right? Like there's a.
Yeah, but most people who have that self-absorbed title by others
Yeah,
are people who are pretty good at boundaries.
Sure.
Like if you're being judged for being that, then likely, yeah.
So then, okay, so I can see it being mirrored, right?
Right.
That I can see these qualities in me.
Yeah.
Or I lack some of those qualities.
So when you're judging someone,
yeah,
it's easier to say that person is that way and I have a problem with that than saying maybe there's a part of me. And that's where it's easier not to do that work because that can bring up a lot of self-attack and self-doubt.
right. So how does that act? Like me seeing that part, how does that actually
help you?
No. I think we can all agree that it helps, right? Because now I'm taking responsibility. But how does that philosophy actually, like, where's doubt in that? Like, how does doubt?
Well, once we move past judgment and we're more sure, we can become okay. If I'm able to collect all of these aspects, all of these shadows that I see out there, and collect them back into myself, and still love myself, well, then self-doubt disappears, right? Because self-doubt is, am I good enough?
Yeah.
Am I doing it right? Am I making an impact? Do people like me? These are all self-doubt based questions. But once we start to do that bringing back the wholeness thing, it's like, well, none of that really even matters. Right? Because I know I'm a good person. So now we're starting to now move in the triangle over to the other side of the triangle at that moment. Because now we're coming out of judgment into control. Do you want to show the image? Are we freezing again?
No, we're not freezing.
Oh, look, there's some questions.
Yeah, there's some.
Here's a great question. Okay. Can you talk about self-doubt and not keeping boundaries? So, if you let someone repeatedly break your boundaries, this does allow self-doubt in you and it becomes a vicious cycle. How do you break the cycle? Yes, so you're absolutely right. If you keep yeah, I want to see that again.
Oh, you want to see the screen again?
If I can.
Yeah.
Right. So if you repeatedly let someone break your boundaries, you're going to start doubting, like, should I even set that boundary? Maybe they're right. Right. And so I think boundaries, and we haven't really talked much about this, but probably if we looked into it, boundaries and self-doubt would probably be pretty linked.
Yeah.
Because it's like you have to have that confidence to set a boundary.
Yeah.
You have to have trust in yourself that you deserve to set that boundary. Right? Yeah. And so as far as the vicious cycle, I would say the way in for change is coming back to me. And can I start loving myself and respecting myself and honoring myself again? And that kind of moves doubt to the side. It moves self-doubt out of the conversation.
Yeah, I mean, part of it is that if I'm judging somebody out there that says, hey, they know how to ask for what they need. And
you think they're selfish for that.
It's easier to say that than to say, because I have to face my own doubt that, well, I don't know how to ask. I don't actually know what's appropriate to ask for, what's not, how to ask. right, what
Or
my own
another one
boundaries
is to
are.
say like that they're pushy. So whoever's coming at me, maybe I'm judging them as being pushy, rather than looking at myself and saying where am I actually not not
Assertive.
grounded and assertive,
Yeah.
right? And that's actually what I could work on that. I can't work on them being pushy or not pushy, right? That's who they are. That's how they show up. Can I work on my groundedness, my
Right.
rootedness, my steadiness
And
internally?
the issue with judgment, and where I think self doubt also creeps in,
Mm-hmm.
is that if I allow the possibility that what they're doing might be right, is that then there's a possibility that the way I do it might
Might
be
be
wrong,
wrong.
right? Now,
And that
two people
assume,
can
yeah,
have two different ways of handling things. I think
and they
that's
could both
perfect.
be
Yeah,
right.
they could both be right for them, right? But I think what happens is we live in sometimes in this binary world, right? Like it's this right or wrong piece, and I feel like when we're in judgment, especially
Mm-hmm.
where doubt creeps in, is like, well, what if I'm wrong? And then that just opens up a can of worms because I don't know how to handle it.
But what if I'm wrong? Well, there's 257 ways to wash dishes. So you're probably wrong. You're more likely wrong than you are right.
Yeah,
And we have this story, and we've been fed this story that there's a right way to live a life.
yeah.
And you know that same show that I'm watching? It's called Sense8. I'm really enjoying it. It's on Netflix. Um, plug. And one of the things that I'm seeing as I'm watching this show is there's these 8 different people in 8 different parts of the world.
I'm just saying we should get a sponsorship from Netflix.
I like to talk about what I'm doing. Okay, I get it from my mom.
Go
Something's
for it.
exciting I want to talk about. So they're living in these different parts of the world. So there's somebody living in Kenya, and somebody living in Mumbai, and somebody living in Korea, and some like in Seoul, and some like all these different places. And what's really fascinating to me is seeing how differently each person is living on the same planet Earth. The ways that they go to work, the ways that they wear their clothes, the ways that they interact with their loved ones. Like everything is so different in these 8 different places. And so there's no like right way to do it, right?
Yeah.
And it was just such a great reminder because we get caught up in there's a right way to do things, and maybe there's just like 8 billion different ways to do things.
Yeah.
And so the self-doubt is the reason again. Now where does it come from? Adaptively, you want to fit into the group because you want to make sure that you're received by the group because the group protects you as a social mammal. And so the group decides what's the right way, and you do your best to match that as closely as possible. Until a certain point in your development where you say, but is this the way I want to be doing this? Right? And this usually comes in our 20s or so. For some of us, much later. Like for some of us, the question doesn't come till our 60s, and our children have left and they're living their own lives, and now we're asking ourselves the question, like, what is it that I actually want? I've done all this life for other people, and now what is it that I want, right? So that question is so powerful because what you're doing is you're saying, what do I want? Not am I matching what other people want of me? And doubt will come up because you're doing it differently.
Yeah.
Okay, here's a couple of questions. Oh, so the response to the how did it land thing? The person said there was no rebuttal. I saw more of an acceptance and accountability for his actions. Yeah. So another question here. So when self-doubt comes up, is that a younger part because it starts from your childhood?
Some of it.
I would say it could be like it's again that's the inquiry, right? That's the internal inquiry to say like, how old are you, voice that's telling me not to do this? Because sometimes it could be your mother's voice in your head, not a younger part of you, but like a voice of somebody that you grew up with that was saying da da da. And so I could ask myself, okay, when my mom said that, how old does that make me feel? Oh, it makes me feel about 5.
Yeah.
So yeah, then I'm going to talk to that younger part of myself.
Or it could be all right. Like I think you touched on it that later on in life, maybe like a bad relationship, or using that as an example, kind of you're like, so it changes the way you look at the world, right? So it's any experience that I think questions the way you look at the world and your place in it, right? And if you don't feel confident that you have a place in it, I feel like that's where sometimes doubt, like
That
that's
is such a
sometimes
beautiful definition for trauma.
trauma. Yeah, well,
You should write to Gabor and say, I have a definition. Trauma is any experience that makes you question your place in the world. and how you relate to it or whatever. Because what I found is in my work as a therapist is that things that can seem pretty mundane or benign for most people, for some children feel so traumatizing, right? And it's hard to know. It's hard to know what's actually going to be that difficult thing. Like there's a child who can lose their pet and it can be part of the human experience and their first experience in grief and loss, and for another child they could actually bring that right up into their adulthood and never really heal from that loss.
Yeah.
So
Who knows?
who
Yeah,
knows?
but I think again it's that
Oh,
our,
here's a good
our
question.
sense of
Look at this
safety.
question.
Yeah.
Can self-doubt lead to relapse? Yes.
Self-doubt like lead to
If you mean relapse of addiction, I would say most likely absolutely yes.
or relapse of any sort, I guess, right? Like it's like I'm on this path
That
of
will be yeah,
this
addiction.
great
Yeah.
addiction. But even like if
So
we're
one of
making
the things
changes,
in the recovery world, if you look at like the steps, the 12-step program, the one of the first things that you do is you hand it over to a higher power, right? So then it's not about me getting through this, it's about my trust in something greater than myself that's going to help me get through this. So it's not about self-doubt. And that's where you talk about crisis of faith, right? Where you're actually going to put your trust not in yourself, because yourself has only brought you to where you are today and this is not where you want to be. So you're going to put your trust in something bigger than you. And so then it's not about self-doubt at all. It's about just staying connected to that force bigger than myself, whatever you understand that to be.
and even beyond addiction, right? Like so, if we just look at any changes that we're trying to make, any transformations we're trying to make,
Yeah.
sometimes doubt creeps in, like, oh, I don't think I can do this.
Yeah. Like my mountain climb.
Yeah, and it leads us to, okay, well,
It's easier just to do what I know
yeah.
than try this hard thing.
Yeah, and it's so I think, but part of growth is that step, right? Like one of the things that we've talked about, I think, around the triangle, right? If we kind of go back to it, is that this is not a it's not a journey, it's not a one way journey, right? Like it's not like we
It should be a spiral. So
yeah
we have it in two dimensions, but the way that Chuck explains it is like you keep kind of going around the outside of the triangle as you go higher and higher, and
yeah.
the triangle like gets smaller and smaller. You spend less time in each of the sides.
But I think if it feels like, oh, sometimes, right, like, oh, I've made it to the leadership, I should be okay, and the next month
Back in needs.
you lose your parent, you
Right.
lose whatever, right? Like it's like, oh, I gotta go back through this again, and that's okay. I think the part of it is that it's like we're going to take step back because we got to go into the shadow
So
to
can
kind
we
of come
talk
back
about
up.
self-doubt in the other side, in the independent
Yeah,
side?
yeah, let's
Because I think that's
yeah, let's
really
spend some
important
time.
too, right?
Yeah.
So in the dependent side, the issue is that they've got all the power. The other person has all the power, right? The independent side, if we don't actually address self-doubt in the judgment and control part of the triangle, it goes underground. And so when we're in independence and we have self-doubt, it comes out as a compensation. We come out as arrogant, actually, as better than other people. So anybody you know who you think of as arrogant, or maybe that's you, or maybe you've been called that, it's likely a cover and a compensation for buried self-doubt. Because now it's okay, I'm not worse than everybody else. I'm actually better than everybody else. I don't, I'm way better than everybody else. That's how self-doubt manifests on that side of the triangle.
It's overcompensating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With better than behavior.
I'm smarter than.
Yeah. I'm
better
more
looking
successful,
than.
I'm more spiritual, I'm
yeah.
more, grounded. Like we can even take the ego can even take these principles into those spiritual realms, which is kind of dark if you think about it, but it can happen.
But I mean, the ego will take whatever food you give it, right?
Absolutely.
If you're not aware, if you're not being aware, then it's like, oh, you should do this. Like, I don't understand why you're not just doing it, right? Like when you say stuff like that, it comes across as knowing it all,
Yeah.
and part of it is this power struggle that, hey, I figured out the right way. I can't believe you're not you're not doing what I'm telling you to. And I think a lot of us actually deal with this, or we have people in our lives that we deal with, that kind of go through this. So so I think part of it is this journey that we're going through, and one of the things, if I may talk about. Oh, sorry.
Just
go ahead.
one more comment here. So somebody's saying, like an intense workout, the self-doubt kicks in. I'm not sure I can do this. It hurts. And the thing, just like a workout, when you're changing habits, there's going to be a period where it doesn't feel good, right? Because what feels good is to do what's easy for the brain.
Yeah.
So it's going to feel hard. It's going to feel uncomfortable because you're changing habit.
Yeah. This men's group that I'm running, which is ending soon, in a couple of weeks. But then there's also this other group that I attend, or other groups I've attended. It's been an interesting. This piece was like I was stuck in my judgment, in the sense that it's like there are some men that come and they're repeating the story, and then they're okay, and then a few weeks later they're back at the story. You're like, the hell, man. And until obviously I opened up and I started looking at it and saw that this was just another layer, right? That my struggle with, you know, like, oh, this trying to be the hero, trying to be the savior, right, of the family, and letting that go. It wasn't a one-time journey, right? Now it's
Let it
been,
go over and over.
yeah, it's been at least what 8 years since I've started those groups that attending like regularly, and it's like now it's just a regular thing, right? Like it comes up all the time, comes up and let it go, comes up and I let it go, and I think part of it is like we get stuck thinking that we're doing it wrong, right? And I have to catch myself when, especially in my judgment and my control of like trying to when I control the situation of judgment. That's because I feel like I'm losing control and I don't know if I'm doing it right. Like that's when it shows up. So both on the dependent side and the independent side, at least for me.
Right.
Yeah. So I think I mean I know for men it's important that we build those communities where we can have these types of conversations so we can kind of be okay, like okay, I'll accept you even in your okay, there you go, try to be a hero again. It's okay, right?
So, and
And
speaking of
failing.
men,
Yeah.
we're gonna keep talking about this over the next few weeks. We have a men's course that's starting.
Yeah.
It's going to be run by Lucas, who's one of our therapists on the team, who has like
He's joined us, yeah, okay.
extensive years and years of experience running men's groups with all kinds of men from all different backgrounds. So, if you're interested, can you show them our Dragonfly Academy page? Can you
What?
share your screen or no?
What am I showing?
It's
them?
just like all the cool stuff that we did.
Oh god.
You're gonna see some cool stuff. I'm really proud of it. It's a labor of love. Okay. Can it work? Yes?
Hold on.
Okay.
What are you
Okay.
showing them?
So I just want to show you this. So this is our Dragonfly Academy page. And so here where it says live classes, that's where you'll see the men's group. Do you want to just click on that face? So you just you can read through. Lucas is going to be putting up a video here pretty soon to talk to you more about it. So there's that. Can you go back up and show them what we did yesterday? Okay, so, oh, wait, right there. So live class. So this Saturday, you can click on that one too. Texas and I, my business partner and I, were doing this workshop on the 6 building blocks for spiritual alignment, and it's going to be great, and it's only $47. And so if anybody wants, the in-person's already sold out, so those who are in person, you can't get a seat, but online we still have Zoom seats. So if that's something you want to join us on, kind of look through this page and see if it looks interesting to you, and you can sign up online.
And it will be recorded, so it will be
yeah,
available
so if you
after.
can't be there for the actual event, it'll still be available. You'll still get the recording. And then last one, I want to show them the burnout one.
But the page is not.
Oh, it's not. Yeah, there's nothing to look at. Okay, never mind.
The course is there.
We'll show you when it's all fancy and pretty. So go, if you're interested in looking at kind of what we're offering, there's like some meditations there, different things you can look for around self-improvement. So dragonflyacademy.ca, that's where you want to go to see what's happening as far as the self-paced learning that you can do. That's not necessarily time-bound. But
Yeah.
this Saturday is a time-bound thing if you want to be there live with us.
Yeah. So I think for us, we're creating those other groups and other courses. Obviously, that's happening. So kind of any last thoughts on self-doubt, at least for today, and how it relates to the triangle, and if there's any kind of last comments, I guess, because we only have a few minutes left here.
Yeah, so as we're kind of summarizing for those who are with us live on the call, I'd love to hear your kind of takeaway from today. So feel free to type it in the chat if there's something that really struck you or a particular takeaway, because that always helps us to know like what's landing for people, what doesn't really make a lot of sense. I think that the topic for self-doubt is going to be all month. And so we'll have more to unpack on this. But I just thought it was neat to plot it onto this model, and hopefully some of my thinking made sense there for people.
Yeah, I think one of the things we try to do, and maybe we don't succeed all the time, is that these are not individual, independent concepts, right? So self-doubt ties in with boundaries, it ties in with trauma, ties in with love,
healing your inner
child, all of those concepts that we've talked about over the last couple of years now. It is that these are not independent things, right? Like self-doubt is not something like, oh, okay, I can deal with self-doubt but not deal with my childhood trauma.
Right. It's all a web, right?
Yeah, that some of this like the doubt might be right, like how I see the world, my belief system, my core beliefs, all of those things, they have to be looked at together, right? So now when I'm looking at core beliefs, that means I'm gonna have to address my doubts, right? And so it's not a okay, let me just address my doubt and I'll be okay. Doesn't typically work that way, and it's if anything, take away that it's a journey.
Right.
That it's not a destination. This personal development, this idea of self-improvement is not a destination. It's a everyday taking responsibility, taking accountability when we fail. It's okay, right? We fail. Right? I think I messaged somebody yesterday morning saying, hey, I know I said I would do this with you, but I haven't done it. So just have to call myself out on it, right? Just like not being like, oh, this man must think I'm an a-hole, thinks I'm a jerk. I didn't get back to him. Like, no, like take responsibility and just call it out. It's not gonna be the perfect man, right? Yeah. So I think we have one.
So someone's saying, as far as summary or what stood out for them, self-doubt starts young, healing my inner childhood trauma, changing the story, and being comfortable with being uncomfortable. Yeah. Great. So I think we'll probably close it there for today. Thank you everyone for being here with us. For those who were watching on Facebook and YouTube, and those who were here with us live in the Zoom room, thank you for being here. We'll stop recording.
So let me just allow people, but bye to those that are on the live stream. Thank you for joining us, and if even afterwards, please add some comments, like buttons, all of those things supposedly that we need. We'll end the stream.